Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Do indicate that you can. And we were going through our permaculture principles, and we got as far as principle 7.
For energizer.
Ah, there we are. Greetings, everyone.
Okay. Oh, they want to do a bit of energies, and then we. Hello, Sister Josephine. Sister. Hello. Hello.
Oh, the volume.
Yeah.
The volume of the, what is it called? Mm-hmm.
Okay, we thought, sisters.
Wow.
Hello.
Hello.
Are you hearing us?
Can you hear us?
Let us sort it out.
Okay.
Right? No?
Are you hearing us? We can hear you properly. For us, we can hear you.
This video, this thing of yours. I don't know how to do it again. I joined with the day.
You can choose to.
Hello?
Yes, sister. Are you hearing us now?
Yes, please.
Great.
Okay, sure. Do you want to do the energizer, or we carry on straight away?
No, we have finished the dancing.
Okay.
We missed that.
Okay, we missed the dancing.
Okay. All right, Steve, over to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So where would we start with a big, complex challenge? If we want to design systems that are going to be really strong and robust, they're going to last a long time, they're going to understand and use local resources, they're going to create long-term benefit to the whole community. Where would we begin? And the answer is, permaculture says you start from the pattern and you move to the detail. The real world is really complex, and your circumstance will be unique. But at the same time, you'll experience the same sort of processes that everyone else does. So we move from patterns to detail. Our image is that of a spider's web. We've all seen a spider's web, and when you see one, you instantly recognize, a spider's web. But actually, no two spiders' webs are ever the same. There are different species of spiders. They have different approaches to making webs. And obviously, the actual location of where it's made, the anchor points and the options that the spider had on the day that it made it. Plus, the wind was blowing. It might have been raining. Another insect might have come along and got caught in that net. So it's going to, each time it creates that web, it's going to be unique. So each time you use permaculture design principles, you're going to create a design which is unique, because it will speak to your needs, your skill sets, the resources that you had, the priorities that you have. It will reflect your values, your tastes, your favorite vegetables or colors or plants. It will be influenced by you, but in the same way as all spiders' webs are the same, it's a permaculture design. So when we say move from patterns to detail, I mean patterns like, well, what's your weather like? What's your climate like? We need to design to fit that pattern. Where does the sun rise? Where does the sun fall? You know, what's the shape of our landscape? Where is there water? What's the pattern of demand for food? Is it seasonal? Is it, you think of many ways in which our design needs to reflect and harmonize the patterns around it, patterns of availability, of opportunity, and also of demand. It needs to understand the systems, so the seasons, and any other considerations. So we say here, the first 6 principles tend to consider systems from a bottom-up perspective. We think about elements, organisms, and individuals. The second set of principles tend to emphasize the top-down perspective of the patterns and relationships that tend to emerge by system, self-organization, and co-evolution. So in other words, as we slowly develop our design and we implement it, it's going to kind of evolve, because we're going to go, oh, that bit worked well, we might do a bit more of that, and that bit didn't work, so we might make some changes. Pattern recognition is an outcome of the application of Principle 1, observe and interact, and it is the necessary precursor to the process of design. Okay, we come into this a bit more into detail as we go on, but we say we design from patterns to detail. The designs that we create, just like we see in nature, need to be integrated. We're interested in creating connections. One of the things, when we observe nature, we understand that nature is typified by mutually beneficial relationships, by symbiosis, by ways and means and strategies in which both parties benefit. So an integrated system is much more like designing a forest garden with many different species that all interact, as opposed to a monoculture system of just one plant. Within Principle 8, we're encouraged to, well, let's have a look at this image. What does this image say to you, this icon? It could be, it's a pattern. Perhaps it's a flower. Perhaps they're the petals of a flower. Or could it be an abstract, we're looking down on a group of people, and the circles are their heads, and these are their arms linking together. So from that, we get the idea of many hands make light work. It's so much easier and more effective to work together as a team. And think about how that idea of teams translates out from just people working together to the elements in a system working together, be that your garden or your food forest. We are creating integrated systems. The next really important way of thinking within permaculture, of how we design, is we build small and slow solutions. So here are the rules of design: is start from your back door, start locally. The closer to home that you start, the more you can observe and interact with your design. If you start small and it's not working ideally, you can make corrections. You can learn as you go along. If you start big and it doesn't work, that's a big problem. Something fails. You invested a lot of time and energy and resource, and then it doesn't work. So see how we have this image here of the snail with its home on its back, with its shell on its back. And think about how a snail shell, as the snail grows, so does the shell. It kind of rotates. It's the bit where it's attached to the back of the snail's back. It's constantly growing. So that shell, as it rotates, it always stays in proportion to the snail. The shell stays in proportion to the size of the snail as it grows incrementally, little bit by little bit. This is how we like to do design in permaculture. We start small and we allow it to grow bit by bit. So it's functional at every scale. And then when we reach a scale that we're happy with, we then allow that system to replicate. We don't have to keep making it bigger and bigger. We can then start another one. So it says here, systems should be designed to perform functions at the smallest scale that is practical and energy efficient for that function. Human scale and capacity should be the yardstick for a humane, democratic, and sustainable society. So it also talks about working at a human scale, and a human scale is a scale at which we can know each other and trust each other through direct experience rather than having to be told. Small is beautiful. Small and slow solution mean mistakes can be corrected and become learning opportunities. Starting small also allows for the design to evolve and grow in proportion. Incremental growth is much more sustainable and allows for learning and investment. Permaculture designs must fulfill their function and return a surplus. The reinvestment of surplus allows for incremental growth. This is the key to a successful design. Start small, allow growth, then seek to replicate the best examples. The proverb, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, is a reminder of one of the disadvantages of size and excessive growth. With the proverb, slow and steady wins the race, shows that slow and steady growth is sustainable. Slow and steady growth we can constantly learn from. So we might want to achieve big long-term things, but we do that by starting small, by seeing the patterns, and deliberately developing interconnected systems. So one of my shorter definitions of permaculture is it's to consciously design mutually beneficial relationships. So if I can set something in motion that benefits me, but it also benefits you, then we have then the basis for collaboration. And the more we can stack in mutually beneficial relationships, the stronger our system becomes. And because we're starting small, we're starting local, we're starting with the resources that we have, there's nothing to stop us beginning our process immediately and starting and allowing it to slowly grow. So you can imagine you create a small fertile area, you focus your energy on there, your grey water, your food waste, your compost, it's being fed into that system. So now it grows, and you can grow green manure crops. You can grow a range of different things which help you extend the system. So now we're growing out from a position of strength. This is a very key idea in permaculture. And what also is to say is, when you get it right and you start small and you allow it to grow, it can then actually grow quite quickly. And you create systems which become very strong and very resilient. So what matters is that you make a start and that you start small, and don't worry about where that will go, because you'll find it present its own evolution in time. As we thinking about our design and as we start to implement it, we are encouraged to use and value diversity. There's a saying, a word of warning: don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't risk everything, invest everything into one single strategy. So the great diversity of forms, functions, and interactions in nature and humanity are the source of evolved complexity. The role and value of diversity in nature, culture, and permaculture is itself complex, dynamic, and at times apparently contradictory. Think about this. The more elements there are in a system, the more biodiversity in a forest, the more different kinds of fish in a lake, the more stable that system becomes, because it's not reliant on any one element. And each one of those elements kind of will have a regulatory or balancing effect on the others. So we are, because we're learning from nature, we build systems that value diversity. That means lots of different species working together and interacting and contributing in different ways. And in our designed garden system or food forest, not all of those plants that we're growing are for us. Some of them are to feed the system itself. You know, we grow certain kinds of plants to feed the soil. We can call those green manures. We can grow certain kinds of plants to feed predator species that help regulate pest species. We incorporate a diversity of species so that we have different yields at different times of the year, so on and so forth. And there seems to be no upper limit to diversity as well. We can always add a new different species into a system. Now, principles 11 and 12, very, very interesting. There's a big relationship between 10 and 11. So it says, use and value diversity. How do we create and maintain diversity? Well, we use edges and value the marginal. Now, I don't know, you should have talked about edges right at the beginning, really, and one of the things that we observe from nature is we get a unique set of conditions where there is an edge between two systems. So let's just think where the water meets the land. There's a very, very interesting edge point there where there's some of the advantages of being in the water and some of the advantages of being in the land. The fish come in to feed along the shoreline because of all of those different interactions. The surface between water and air. There are species that live just on top of the water and the species that live just underneath, and other species that come along and exploit that edge. We tend to have more species, more interactions, and more diversity at edges. And so when we design, we could deliberately create edges. So put some wetland in your design, have a water, or have some open water, or think about the path. That's the edge between the people and the garden. When you walk along a garden path, you make observations. Oh, I'll pick that weed, I'll pick that fruit, because you can see it. You've created an edge, an interface between the gardener and the garden. So in this, this is a big idea, by the way, and it's summarized in this icon here, where we're seeing, is that the sunrise or the sunset? You know, that special time of day, just we get the first light or the last light. Think how that edge, it's not quite day, it's not quite night. You can still see, but it's not so hot. We have the advantages of both. We're seeing the hills giving way to the plain. So there's a very interesting edge between the steep land and the flat land. Is that a road or is that a river? Think about edges that might be described on riverbanks or within flows of water or within flows of people. We're also reminded, though, and this is quite an interesting statement, about just following. It says here, just because you're on a well-beaten path does not mean you are on the right track. So think about how mainstream views, mainstream thinking sort of creates a road, if you like, that we all follow. Hey, we're just going along, following what everybody else is doing. But what if everybody else is wrong? What is if we want to actually work for change? Because what we're seeing is a global society that has so far not risen to the challenge of climate change, has not understood the threat of soil erosion. We're part of a society that thinks it's okay to use petrochemical fertilizers and pesticides when we know they're toxic, when we know that they have unintended consequences. So maybe we don't want to follow the well-beaten path. Maybe we want to go to the edges. And it says, use edges and value the marginal. Well, what's the marginal? Is that the unheard voices? That those voices at the edges that we don't always pay attention to? We need to hear those unique and distinct voices that are not just coming from the cacophony, the loudness of mainstream society. As religious people, you'll know that Jesus looked to the people on the margins of society, did he not? The poor people, the prostitutes, the beggars, and he understood that they were part of the totality of the human experience. Well, I think about that as a metaphor. Can we look to the edges and value the elements that maybe previously we didn't understand how they contributed to the whole? This principle is challenging you to think for yourself. Don't just follow the well-beaten path. And also think about principle 1, observe and interact. That means test these ideas out for yourself. Don't believe me. Use my knowledge and my teaching as an input, but then go away and test it for yourself. I don't expect you to parrot my words and say, oh, Steve, the great oracle said this. That's not how permaculture works. I'm asking you, how do these ideas resonate with you? And how can you apply them in your world in a way in which it meets your needs and the community around you and speaks to the natural world? So don't follow just because it's a well-beaten path. Don't think you're on the right track. Very challenging principle. But look, next time you're out and about, look to the edges, the edge of the road, the edge of a path, the edge of a community, and think about what species live on those edges and what might they be telling us. Often we see things, new ideas, and new species, new things tend to come in from the edges, from the margins. Permaculture itself is very much an edge principle. It's an edge way of thinking. And we want to influence society. Permaculture is there as a tool for us to better understand our world. But we're doing that. We're coming in from these social edges or educational edges. And we're always interested in connecting to receptive people like yourselves who can then take these ideas and apply them in your circumstance. So let's see what it says here. It says, within every land-based ecosystem, the living soil, which may only be a few centimeters deep, is an edge or an interface between the non-living mineral world and the atmosphere. So for all terrestrial life, including humanity, this is the most important edge of all. Only a limited number of hardy species can thrive in shallow, compacted, and poorly drained soil. Deep, well-drained, aerated soil is like a sponge, a great interface that supports productivity and healthy plant life. So, hey, there's the best example of an edge, is the soil itself. Now, when we look into soil, we realize that healthy topsoil, by volume, is 50% air. It's fluffed up. It's an edge between the mineral world and the atmosphere. And the more that edge is exploited and opened up, the more possibility there is for plant growth. So, big principle, challenging one, use edges and value the marginal. Don't just follow, ask critical questions. Is this where I want to go? Yeah, and be prepared to make your own path. Don't just blindly follow. Keep asking the questions. Principle 12 is, this is like the hours of a clock. So principle 12 feeds into principle 1 again. We go around. So there's no end to this. It's a cycle. Principle 12, which sometimes we could use as our start point, actually. Sometimes I like to start permaculture at principle 12. And it's about change. It says creatively use and respond to change. See things for what they can be, not what they are. And our symbol here is a butterfly that has transformed itself from a caterpillar into a chrysalis and then into a butterfly. Now think about that as a metaphor for change. So, some things we can say about change. Change is always difficult. It can be challenging. It can be painful. And there can be winners and losers. But change is inevitable. The only certainty that we have in life is that today will be different from yesterday. Change is a constant process, but that change also conforms to patterns. Think about seasons. Think about the months of the year. Think about the patterns of growth and development. So actually, change isn't just random. Often it's caused by, it conforms to patterns and long-term processes. Creatively use and respond to change. So actually, where there is change, there comes new opportunities. On the back of things changing, new niches, new opportunities open up. Now, right now, the whole world order is changing. We've built an economy that's based on extractive processes, an economy based on sucking oil out of the ground and burning that oil to have a lot of energy. That is not going to stay like that forever. I guarantee it. It's a finite resource. Burning oil has significant ecological, environmental consequences, and we build systems from oil that are not sustainable in the long term. So as and when that system starts to crack, that will be very scary because we become reliant on it. But on the other side of it, we'll realize is there are other ways of doing things. We can work with local and natural resources. We can build complex systems that catch and store energy. We can build complex systems that emulate nature and look like a forest, but they provide the energy and resources that we need sustainably. So think about the opportunities that might come about for us as we work with these processes of change. We're going to create new types of systems, new ways of being, maybe new languages and words around these concepts. We write new songs, tell new stories. All of these are new opportunities. So permaculture wants us to say to us, as much as change can be scary, as much as change can be threatening to our current status quo, we might want to try and fight against it. But ultimately, we will lose. In the same way as night becomes day and day becomes night, change is a certainty. So let's work with change in a creative way. Change in whatever form it comes is inevitable. Change is the one constant in life. Permaculture design is a way to successfully navigate the constantly shifting sands of time. Change can be frightening, destabilizing, and challenging, but it also represents new opportunity. Permaculture challenges us to embrace change and to apply learning to create ways forward that make best advantage of new conditions. So how can you make best advantage of new conditions? Understand, again, observe and interact. See those forces of change around you and ask. So if you imagine that change is like a huge wave coming, imagine a huge wave crashing down onto the beach. Now you either allow that just to engulf you and dash you on the rocks, or you can, the metaphor maybe is you can surf it. You use that change as a way to drive you, that wave, to drive yourself forward and to create new opportunities. So I think we're entering a world of new opportunities, and we have a chance to in some way lead, or to some way innovate, to pioneer, to create options for the people around us, and this is what I focus my life on, is I realize I don't know the answers. I don't know what form that change is going to come. I can guess. I can make my best estimate, but I don't know the answer. So what's the best thing I can do is I can create working models that make sense to me here and now. So I've designed and built vegetable gardens using permaculture principles. I've designed and built food forests using permaculture principles. I've designed and built energy systems using permaculture principles. I'm part of a housing cooperative, which is based on permaculture principles. I'm within a community where I constantly try to build beneficial relationships with my neighbors, with the people around, as a way of building my own resilience. We didn't know that we would be challenged by a global pandemic of COVID-19. I hadn't prepared for that. But what I had done was help build a stronger, more interconnected community. And that made it easier for me to survive the challenges that came with the lockdowns and restricted working and so forth. By using and valuing diversity, I have more than one way that I contribute to my well-being and to my living and my earning and so forth. I can write, I can teach, I can grow food, I can have a range of different ways in which I can respond to the challenges and opportunities around us. So I'm gonna let's go to this model, and then we'll take a short pause. And I think it'd be really nice to have any questions or feedback, or perhaps Gerald would like to just chair a little bit. I'm going to show us, though, a consensus model. And for me, I think this is a very powerful, very simple, but very powerful diagram that might show us how we might use permaculture to come together. And we're constantly facing adversity, challenges, whether they're just day-to-day challenges of, feeding ourselves and looking after the babies and getting on with our jobs, or whether they are, big long-term challenges around food security and building strong communities. I would suggest that to come together as a group to face challenges and to build long-term goals, we must come together around a core set of values. And I think permaculture gives us that in its ethics model. Earth care, people care, fair share. We're coming together to do long-term problem solving, but we're going to do it in a way in which we speak to nature and we're learning from nature and the natural world. We're going to do it in a way in which we build strong, interconnected local communities, and we're going to do it in a way in which meet our own needs first, but generate surpluses for investment. And if we can agree on those values, then we have a very strong starting point. The next step for us as a group to look at is it's much easier to agree about a long-term distant goal than it is to agree about what we're going to do exactly, now or tomorrow. And we need a set of logic and priority. So let's think about let you think about what are your long-term goals as a community there. Who are the people you want to reach or benefit, or to what important, what's the relative importance of earning income or growing food or protecting wildlife and biodiversity? What are the challenges within your community that you want to address? These are going to be informed by your long-term goals. Okay. So each one of those long-term goals is going to need a set of strategies to achieve it. So let's say one of your long-term goals is to achieve food security. Okay. What's your strategy to achieve food security? Now you could sit down and think, well, we're going to need to have a plant nursery. We're going to need to do some seeds. We're going to need some compost heaps. We're going to catch some water. Okay, those are your strategies. You're going to start identifying those and writing them down. And then for each one of those strategies, you can break that then down into specific activities. So our long-term goal is food security. One of our strategies is soil building. The activities within soil building include build a compost heap, plant some green manures, build some swales. And then when you know what your activities are, we understand why we're doing it, because we've talked about the long-term goal and strategy. So now we've broken it down to an activity. We're going to make a compost heap today. We now understand why we're making a compost heap. We decided where we're going to put it. So then it's just a matter then of identifying what resources we need to do that. And that's then a much easier decision to make, because we've now unpacked the rationale behind it. So I'm going to, in our next session, I'm going to take you, I'm going to show you a strategy diagram of how we might, what areas we might want to start to build our strategies around for each of key long-term goals. Anyway, I'm going to pause it there and hand over to you, Gerald, and I'm sure you'd like to offer a few summary points.
I would just say thank you, Steve. This is, mind-blowing. Is overly a very awesome, summary to the already the 6 days and the forthcoming 6 days. I couldn't put it any better. But then, as part of the reason why I emphasized us on having this recorded, is it would be good for the team and everyone to reflect on it as we go into this phase now, because the next step is we're going to split into different teams, as we usually do with most of the PDCs, split, and then let each team come up with a design. So this session is really feeding in so much, both to reinforce what we covered in the previous days, but also as a foundation for the coming days. Thanks, Steve. Unless we have any questions or submissions from the team, otherwise Steve will proceed to the next. Hello. All right, I guess we'll move on to the next.
Okay. Hang on a sec. I downloaded something and can't find it now. Oops.
And maybe...
Can we go back to Google, please? Or you would prefer Zoom because of the recording?
Yeah, we would prefer Zoom.
Okay, for his presentation, yeah?
Yes.
And what time are we, what time are we intending to finish? Because it's 12:44.
Oh, it's lunchtime. Okay. I think let's utilize the remaining about 20 minutes.
Okay, then.
Yeah. Steve, does that work out?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll do 20 minutes.
Okay, please. And maybe just a quick one. please keep referencing, because part of our assignment is to keep relating between permaculture and then the Laudato Si and the overall eco education.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I mean for the team, yes, but
Great.
there are really lots and lots of linkages.
That's lovely. Okay, well, we'll carry on. And somebody shared with me this diagram, which is a little bit overwhelming to look at first. But it touches on all the key areas that we might want to think about in terms of building our long-term strategy. And it's called bioregional organization map, which is a bit of a mouthful, but let's just explore it a little bit. And in it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's 8 or 9 areas actually. So 9 priorities that we might want to think about. And it's organized. So the most important one is always sort of down here at about 7 o'clock. And if we just zoom in, whoops, how do I do that? Right. Sorry, I'm zooming in somehow. Oh, I see. There it is. If we want to build a strong, resilient system that's integrated, that's informed by these 12 principles, then Bill Mollison has suggested that we look at 9 areas. So, and again, these might have a sense of order and priority to them. And maybe one of the first areas we want to think about is food and food support. So what this actually suggests is that as we develop our team, as we develop our community, we assign individuals to be responsible for supporting key functions. In permaculture, we design to fulfill functions. Okay, and we were specific about what those functions are. So the first area that we're going to look at would be food support. We need a team of people, maybe 3 people, who take a view to think about food support systems. Okay, so, and from the food support, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's at least 6 different areas that that we would also want to pay attention to. So you can imagine that we might build a sort of like a hierarchy of priorities. So from starting with our food support, we might need to build a team that looks at plant resources. Skills, knowledge, information, plant collections, seed, where are you going to get your seeds from? Are there native species available around that we can use? Are there government departments that can help us? Are there other demonstration gardens around? How do we build our own plant resource base? Now remember, food production is about translating the energy of the sun through plants into stored forms of energy. So if we're going to be interested in food production, we need to have, we need to put some of our time and energy into developing our plant resources. We need a diversity of species. We need local species. We need things that we need, the skills that go with that. So you can see we're going to need, for our food support plan, is going to need a plant resource team of 1, 2, or 3 people. As we develop our plant resources, we might be able to then introduce some animal resources, because now we have some fodder. Again, is we need to have a team of 1, 2, or 3 people who understand about breeding and propagating animals, how to look after them, the different species, maybe fish and aquatic species, about native species. Might we have a demonstration farm, or maybe there is one that we could go and learn from. We need skills. Are there contractors and professionals around that we could go and ask help and support from? So underneath each heading, we can build a plan, a strategy, and have team members in place who are thinking about those things. We've got plants and animals. The next area that we might look at is pest management. Can we be aware of the threats and what possible, pests we need to be looking out for? What biological controls can we put in place? What natural animal behaviors help regulate pest populations? As our food and as our plant and animal systems grow, there might then be a set of questions and challenges around how we harvest and process that food. How do we catch and store that energy that we've produced? Do we know about food fermenting? How about food processing and drying? Do we need special equipment for that? Do we need special skills? We need to build a team around the food processing function. But again, look, see how there's an order to it. First, we have to grow the plants. And then when we have enough plants, we can introduce some animals. Then we can look at the potential pest situation that might come up within that. And then as we have, as our yields develop, we're going to ask ourselves how we're going to catch and store and harvest. When we get to surpluses, we might be thinking about markets and outlets. So we need a strategy then about selling, packaging. Are we going to have a retail outlet or a roadside sales or local markets? And as we come around, our order of priorities is, well, what support services are out there? As we do the catch and store energy, we slowly start to build a system as we move from principle 3 to principle 4. That system will give us feedback. We will learn from the experience. Are there agencies out there that we can go and talk to? Are there suppliers of the materials that we need? Or the land planning services? Let's look at the wider systems about training, staff development, machinery and equipment. So you can see how we start with a simple function, food support, and then we break that down into different sets of strategies, which come in order: plants, animals, pests, food processing, marketing, and then support services. You see how there's a logic to that. And then and that's the first of our 9 areas. That's food support. The second area might be buildings. So wherever there's land, there's usually buildings. There's going to be a set of considerations. Wherever there is people together, we're going to need sewerage, compost, waste disposal, waste recycling. And actually, because of principle 6, produce no waste, that should be one of our priorities. If you have a building, you have a rainwater catchment device as well, because that roof is going to collect the water. Where's that going to go? What are you going to do with it? If you have a group of people together, you then got to think about the human manure sewage systems. We could have composting systems. We could understand also that we're all just part of nutrient cycling. Obviously, there's a load of things around construction materials. What are we going to build our buildings out of? What are the skills, the elements within that? You know, are we working with local and natural materials? Are we working with local skills? Buildings have energy systems attached to them. We want to create energy efficient systems. Can we generate power on site? Can we reduce the need for power by good design? How are we going to heat the building, cool the building? What skills are out there available that we can draw on to help us build and maintain our buildings? All of this should be part of our strategic thinking. So look, let's look at these 9 areas. I won't go into the detail of all of them. We'll make this chart available. I think this is a fantastic way to organize yourself. So the 9 areas we have: food support, building support, livelihood, social support, health support, information support, community and security, transport, and future trends and threats. Each one of these groups should feed back to the hub, and each one of these groups needs to be sort of empowered to drill down and to explore their areas of responsibility. Now, members might want to join more than one group. That's fine. Often we have a mix of skills. We might be able to contribute into health support and to gardening, or know a bit about carpentry, so we can do some building as well. But look how permaculture's encouraging us to think holistically. It's encouraging us to think in an integrated way. Not just to focus on one area, but to try and think of them all in an interconnected whole. And so I'm just showing you that that diagram to show that's actually translated directly from the Permaculture Designer's Manual as a way in which a regional group might come together to organize itself, to start thinking and being aware of those key 9 areas that we need to have a plan in place for to ensure our long-term sustainability and security. Okay, so there's my there's some kind of summary thoughts to get us into this, and I'm very ready to accept any questions or feedback or thoughts from anyone in the room there.
Wow, thanks, Steve. What a way to sum it up. And yes, that chart is really, really vital, and is touching the different aspects. I'm happy that the medical mission sisters had that kind of holistic approach. They also look at the, anyways, within the name, the medical aspect, the healthcare, the livelihoods. So if anything, this would be like a map going forward, and the details on there really is really interesting. So we'll have it placed on the Google Drive, where we have the materials, and Sister Josephine will be able to distribute, or we'll see how to print out and see that each of us has a copy of that. Any questions, any compliments, any additional ideas, please? Sister Josephine, sorry to put you on the spot.
Because of Zoom, you have to go where the volume is.
Okay. No, we were still hearing you, but we are happy to see yours. Yeah.
I am very grateful for the input. It is very eye-opening to see And the values of Laudato Si are connected all there, the connectedness, the interrelatedness, and the interdependence that Paul is really encouraging. I don't know why I'm today on Pope Paul. Pope Francis is encouraging us to live. And I'm looking at it as a way of life. Some of our sisters in the Philippines have used the permaculture as part of their spirituality and even formation. So I'm looking at it that it is a real formation that we can embrace here in East Africa, starting from coastlands, from the initial stages of the women who are interested in us up to when they profess and we live their life. So it is a challenge and educative, and it also brings personal mystery, the life, the passion, the cross, the resurrection of Jesus, because of all this which is coming, which is dying, and how you have to embrace this, and also encouraging that at the liminal space, at the edge, that is where life is. I like all those, just putting it together with how we live our vows and the ecology and all that. So it's very educative for me and inspiring and helping me to weave permaculture in my religious life, my Christian life, and in the whole ecosystem. So it's a big challenge, but it is doable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sister. And one thing, I know now, speaking from an administrative point of view, yes, it's an uphill task, but you have our backs, you have our support, and we're looking forward, because really, as we said, in permaculture, what we see as a problem, at the back of it, we invert it and we see a solution. And the beauty with it also, as Steve mentioned, in the principle on valuing the marginal, is ingrained within the Christianity teachings, the Bible teachings, right from the point of the disciples. None of the disciples was so well placed. Yeah. So that is so, connecting directly. So we are happy that we are, making all those connections. And yes, we look forward to progress. Unless we have any other questions, any other additions?
I'll maybe just leave with a final thought as we go for lunch, because you mentioned Laudato Si, and so that's very, very interesting. And, within that, our Pope Francis said, you have to see the natural world, nature, as your sister. It's your mother. You are, we're essentially part of it. So when we think about that principle 8, integrate rather than segregate, is understand the environment isn't outside. You are the environment. You are within it. And every action that you make has an impact because everything's connected to everything else. So through our intention to harmonize with the natural world, even though we might make mistakes, we are creating a positive impact and a ripple that has the ability to affect everything else. And I think about that a lot. So there's a lunchtime thought for you to take away.
Thanks, Steve. And I don't think we could end it, on a sweeter note than that one, or end it any better. Thank you, everyone. Should we do a salutation for Steve? Do you know how we do our club? Yeah. Let's do a quick one as a thank you to him and as a sign of appreciation. Irene? You're taking the lead on that as also one of our energy users, but also as an appreciation to Steve. It's been, awesome. It's beyond, it's invaluable. The session has been beyond. Okay, should I count? 1
Hours.
Okay, flowers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, enjoy your lunch and see you.
Are we coming back?
Yeah.
Please?
Yeah, what time will we be back?
No, I think she's asking, what time do you hope to be in Uganda?
Oh, I see. Oh, I don't know. Currently, I'm not sure, but I will let you know. I'll come and see you.
Great. This afternoon at what time are we back?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get ready for the lunch and then the practicals afterwards. Then there will be an interesting video, the man who stopped the desert. I'll place it in our storage place